Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade has gone on the offensive against a massively superior Russian force. Just why did they charge in to a growing Russian army in Kharkiv? And how were they successful? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay. So this is coming to us from a couple of different sources, the Kiev Post, right? And notably, the 3rd Assault Brigade themselves actually revealed what had happened on literally a YouTube video. Now, this is the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade who reportedly overran an entire Russian battalion's worth of defensive positions, taking control of nearly 2 square kilometers of Russian-occupied territory. But that wasn't even the real objective, right? This is, of course, from their own Telegram. And the real objective was actually to destroy Russian logistics. Now, on this battlefield, Russians outnumbered the Ukrainians by 2.5 to 1, with even more enemy support forces in the backfield, right? But the goal of this operation, again, was to diminish the offensive capabilities of the Russian 20th Army. And as they say, for now, this objective's been achieved. The 3rd Assault Brigade, of course, reportedly took out around 300 Russian personnel and a lot of damage to their equipment and weapons. Now, he credited, of course, meticulous planning, unconventional tactics, and coordinating artillery, air defense, and intelligence effects, right? Of course, he says the true heroes of the battlefield were the tank crews, sappers, scouts, and above all, the assault troops. This is no kidding. I don't know what else to tell you. But why is the question you're probably asking yourself, right? Now, I can't show you the footage of this offensive because, as you guys know, YouTube prohibits me from showing essentially any combat footage. So if you want that analysis, it's actually going to drop next week on my premium site, combatvetnews.com. That's where you guys can support me. It's the way, the support that I get since I don't get a lot of sponsors. So I'm going to link that in the description if you want. Now, what I think was interesting is the why, or really the deeper objective, right? And this is one of the things that is often talked about in the U.S. military's planning process, is that you want to understand what's called commander's intent or the higher unit's mission. And the reason is exactly what we see here, right? Because ostensibly, 3rd Assault Brigade gets told just, hey, attack this superior Russian force. Well, one, there's a little more to it than that. But two, this superior Russian force, right? The idea is that what you're launching is what's called a spoiling attack. And the reason is revealed here, right? The quote that we have from one of the commanders is, we have to understand that the Russian reserves are large. They have a system in place ensuring that they hardly ever run out of them. If we are talking about infantry reserves, Russians have a large number of artillery and first-person view drones. The number and scale are on their side, but their plans have been disrupted as a result of this attack, as their logistics and the quantity does not work as an advantage if the logistics are not working well or plans are going wrong. This is exactly what this reveals, exactly what they're doing, right? And again, it says, another quote from them, one of the successes is that we have disrupted the Russian 20th Army's plans and their opportunities for further advances. As we understand, they wanted to advance towards Makivka on the other hand, but now they're transferring personnel and assets to other frontline areas across the country. And at the moment, they're trying to partially recover their positions and build a new line of defense. So what this attack was, it wasn't about it wasn't about seizing territory. This was what's called a spoiling attack in military parlance. And what that is when the enemy is preparing to attack, right? They're bringing logistics and reserves up forward. They are consolidating their units into assault elements, right? They are literally transitioning away from defensive posture to an offensive one. And when that happens, particularly at this scale, it's a slow consolidating process. And in the era of FPV drones, you can observe it, right? Likely Ukrainian intelligence officials likely observed in real time as Russia was building increasing stores of offensive weapons closer to the front line. They likely observed armor being consolidated in key points, right, that would enable them to push into Ukrainian positions. And the Ukrainians said, listen, this is the best time to attack them. And the reason they would say that is because literally if ammo is being pulled out and troops are being pulled out of defensive positions, that means not only are they not available to actually conduct the defense, but they are consolidated because they are preparing to attack. That means that they are more vulnerable. Again, in defensive positions, you might see the tanks spread out across brigades and brigades, right? Across miles. But if you want to assault, you see Russia concentrates its armor to conduct these assaults. So you have everything that makes Russian assaults vulnerable, which is a bunch of armored forces consolidated together, and none of the offensive capacity because they haven't left yet. And so if the 3rd Assault Brigade knows about this, then what you're going to have is, of course, you're going to have an opportunity. And that's what they saw here. They said, listen, this is an opportunity for us. We're not going to go as deep as possible into enemy territory. We may not even choose to stay there. What we want to do is find these key areas where their logistics is at its most vulnerable and their positions are most vulnerable, and we want to ruin their plans, right? It's a little bit like, imagine you're getting ready to go on a trip. You got to pack your car. You got to put stuff out, right? You can imagine that, let's say I had the ability to turn on the rain immediately. If I turn on the rain, once you've pulled out of the driveway or on the road, I don't ruin your trip. You were prepared for that. And if I turn on the rain before you've started packing your car, it also doesn't help because you didn't even start yet. But if I can turn on the rain when the doors are open and the trunk is open and you've got all your bags out, laying out as you try to like pull it out and put it in the trunk, if you could turn on the rain at that point, you can ruin the entire trip. That's what a spoiling attack is, right? It's striking at the moment of maximum unreadiness for the enemy. And that's what the 3rd Assault Brigade did. And apparently they did it in spades. We're going to take a look at the map here in a second. But of course, if you feel like you need a spoiling attack, that secret weapon that lets you get your timing on point, you might just need Strike Gum. Strike Gum has an entire energy drink's worth of caffeine in a single piece of gum with no sugar. So there's no sugar crash. Instead, you got 100 milligrams alpha GPC for further cognitive sharpness. It's superior to an energy drink in every single way. So pick some up. Go to strikegum.com. Get the 5-pack. I'm just going to save you guys the effort. Get the 5-pack. It's got a pack for your house, a pack for your office, gym bag, glove box, and a spare. You're going to have an energy drink wherever you are, literally. And here's the thing. Unlike if you are in any kind of job that uses your hands, you work construction, you're a cop, you're a nurse, you can't show up to a call or a job with a sipping a Red Bull. What do you get? That's crazy, right? So pop a piece of Strike Gum, chew the gum, get both your hands free to do what you got to do. That's the intent here. It was designed when I was in Afghanistan, or rather, it was designed inspired by my time in Afghanistan when I didn't have this and I was stuck carting around cans of Rip Its in my pocket because that's the only way I could get caffeine on a combat patrol. And if you ever walked around Afghanistan literally with this soda can jangling around your pocket, you feel like a fool. And you're like, really? With the U.S. military, with its $2 trillion budget, can't come up with a portable caffeine solution? Well, I did. Strike Gum. Check it out. Strikegum.com. What else can I tell you? Okay. Let's talk about the where. So, where'd this go down? Just zoom it way out. Here's Kharkiv. We talked about the fact that Russian forces want to attack Makivka. But you can see here, 2 kilometers inside the front line, particularly this forested area right here, this river, you can see this is where they advanced. Now, in all likelihood, the Russians were probably bringing their logistics into somewhere like here, or even more likely is that they were probably bringing them up to the edge here of the Zarabets River. You could see they've got to conduct a crossing to get to Makivka, or actually, well, to fully seize Makivka, they've got to conduct a crossing. So what the Ukrainians probably said they want to do is, listen, we want to put these villages in our gun sights, right? Because right now, it would be hard, right? Let's say you want to fly a drone into Novovodyanne. Well, you've got to make it through. There's this pretty robust Russian-controlled territory. Be kind of tough to launch those kind of strikes, right? The strikes that you would need to. Again, you're looking at 3 kilometers. That's outside of visual range. So what they did is they said, listen, we're going to seize this specific forest here, right up to the edge of this river, no more. And we're going to kick them out of these defensive positions, and we're going to own this whole bank of the river. And you can see how beneficial this would be for Ukrainian troops, because now they are literally, they can look out and see Vodiane, literally the entire town, less than 2 kilometers. You can hit that. You could hit that with a machine gun. So I think that's the intent here. The intent here was to, one, boot out any sort of Russian prep that was happening on the western side of the Zarabets River, and they wanted to be in gunshot, in eye shot, so to speak, of Novovodyanne. But you can see if their goal is to take Makivka, this key route here, right, is going to be essential because it's the route that connects Novovodyanne to Makivka, right? Other than that, you've just got this sort of deeper logistics hub here. But you can really see that this is a pretty sparse terrain, right? You've got one route running east-west, you've got this north-south route, and you've got this other north-south route, and that's it. So it's a very simple kind of setup. And so if you can mitigate, again, the key strong point here, you're going to make it a lot harder for Russian troops to move logistics through this route. Again, imagine, do you really want to be the Russian truck driver who's got to drive when you are just less than 2,000 meters away from Ukrainian positions? The Ukrainians could pop out a drone, smoke you on this, and you can see that it's going to be a lot harder to build up an assault on Makivka. So this is, again, a classic spoiling attack that we're seeing here, seizing these key Russian positions as they're built up. And again, you're not going to see more. They're not going to conduct a bridge crossing. That's not what they're here to do. They're here to bloody the nose of the Russians. And here's the other thing. Russia has now had to learn another valuable lesson, is that while they have considerable reserves in the Kharkiv region, Russia's again got to sit there and say, okay, what can I do? I can reinforce this position, right? Or at least offset some of the losses. I could pull forces out of other places we're fighting. But in all honesty, Russia's made clear that's not really their priority. They want to push out this salient here. And so that's why you're seeing, I think, Ukrainian forces, again, continue to say, listen, if Russia doesn't want to shore up Kursk, they don't want to shore up Kharkiv, if they are just so fixated on this offensive action, which, again, has made steady progress, but this is pretty minor progress right here, then Ukraine says, fine, if you don't want to back up your other troops, we're going to keep pounding into them again and again and again and again. Again, you could see here, there's a different sort of line of contact, but the fundamental question remains basically the same, right? So here's Makivka. Here's likely where they're reporting the fighting taking place, Novovodyanne. But again, this is pinging it much more to the north, but realistically, I think here's Novovodyanne. Here's where the fighting really took place. And again, you could see why the Ukrainians want to own this key pocket here and force the Russians over into the swampland, which again, this is likely very low ground. So they're probably looking across the bank, so to speak, at Novovodyanne. Much harder, much tougher situation, much tougher place to try to fight. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. A huge thank you to, of course, the Colonel tier members, Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Gaius Marning, Eugenia Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Francis Carius, AL90. Thank you guys so much. And of course, be sure to subscribe. That makes a difference. Tells the YouTube algorithm that I'm one of the legit Ukraine creators. I'm not some shill. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks a lot. Cheers.